A Habs reporter came out and said that Arber Xhekaj will be in conversations if Montreal chooses to trade for Trevor Zegras. We're going to be talking about that, plus the truth behind Montreal's sneaky acquisition today, and some things from the Habs-Penguins game that have some big implications on the Habs trade deadline plans. You'll want to stick around for all of that on this episode of Habs Digest. But guys, before we get into the video, I haven't reminded you in a while, but over 53% of you watching this video are not subscribed. And if you want the best Montreal Canadiens content out there, daily Habs news, rumors, reports, this is the spot to be. So if you never want to miss anything Montreal Canadiens, hit the button down below. Let's jump first into the game. It wasn't a great game. I'm not going to spend too much time on the game itself. The Habs played a solid first period, actually. And for good chunks of the game, the Montreal Canadiens really looked like they were outplaying the Pittsburgh Penguins. They were winning the possession battle. They were really keeping Pittsburgh to the outside. There were long stretches where the Penguins weren't getting any shots, but at the end of the day, some bad turnovers, some really poor zone entries, and just some laziness cost the Montreal Canadiens a lot. We're going to bring up the box score. Mike Matheson scored. Perfect pass from Chris Letang, hey? Colin White, new Habs acquisition that I'll get into a bit in the next segment of the video. A solid game from him, is what it is. But he turned it over to Chris Letang, who then in turn turned it right over to Mike Matheson in the slot. Beautiful screen from Tanner Pearson leading to the goal. As you can see, though, Joshua Roy with 5 shots on net, 6 shot missed. I mean, he was pretty good. Slafkovsky playing more than any other Habs forward in this game. Juraj Slafkovsky logged more minutes than anyone on the Montreal Canadiens not named Mike Matheson, or I guess Cayden Primeau. So that's encouraging. Slav had his moments this game, but he looked aggressive. That whole first line, Slafkovsky, Suzuki, Caufield, they looked like they were really, really, really trying to get something going. Mike Matheson worked his butt off this whole night. Same thing with Guhle. But at the end of the day, a lot of the other Habs just didn't seem to have it in them tonight. I mean, there were some efforts. Newhook looked pretty solid. Anderson was working hard, couldn't quite get anything going. But a lot of the Habs just felt like, I don't know, it felt like the passes weren't crisp. It felt like the zone entries were really poor. Now, part of that is the fact that they just played in Montreal yesterday and are now playing in Pittsburgh today on a back-to-back. Not always easy when you have to switch cities on a back-to-back, and it's a game the Penguins desperately needed to win, and you saw some of that desperation at moments. But I digress. I don't want to talk too much about the game because there's not a whole lot of positives. In fact, there's a big negative. Jayden Struble, now as of the recording of this video, not sure what the injury status is, but he came off the ice and boy, it did not look good. He was putting virtually no weight on his leg as he was getting helped down to the dressing room. Really wish him well because, with all the rumors surrounding recently, of course, with Arber Xhekaj really establishing himself. Also, shout out Arber Xhekaj. I thought he had a great game. He's doing stuff we haven't really seen him do before. It really feels like since he's been in Laval, his confidence to carry the puck has skyrocketed. He's taken the puck end-to-end rushes, almost creating offensive zone entries, offensive opportunities. Amazing stuff from Xhekaj. But back to Struble. With Xhekaj really solidifying himself, Struble's kind of been relegated to sort of a third pairing role. And with Struble on the third pairing, it's like, okay, it works. But what do you do with the other guys? I mean, Harris played again tonight. There was no change. Kovacevic is still out, with Guhle playing some more right D as well. So a lot of left-handed defensemen playing for the Montreal Canadiens right now. Savard, I think it might be the only actual right-handed D-man on the team. But with Struble going out without being able to put any weight on his leg, that begs the question, what is Montreal going to do with Jordan Harris now? Because if Struble's out for the season, there were rumors circulating that Jordan Harris is being shopped by the Montreal Canadiens, and people are saying, yeah, that's very true. The Montreal Canadiens are looking to move Jordan Harris if possible. But if Struble is out, long term, if he is out for the season, I don't see a world where they trade Harris. I don't see any reason to. I mean, yes, you have guys in Laval who you can call up, and yes, you have Lane Hutson coming in at the end of the season, but I feel like at that point, it's like, you might as well keep him. Or on the other hand, now that I'm kind of convincing myself out of this, if you do have Lane Hutson coming in at the end of the season, and you can just call up someone from Laval, there's a couple great defensemen down there who've been playing really, really well. I mean, you can make your pick. Norlinder, not so much. But William Trudeau has looked still not that great this season, but better. There's some options. You can get someone that can be a stopover player, or you can move Guhle back to the left side and just play Kovacevic full time and call up someone to be a seventh D. Maybe we talking Mailloux to step in on the right side? I don't know. But Lane Hutson as well, if he comes in at the end of the season, if you trade Harris, then you can just have that spot sort of pseudo open for Lane Hutson. It's a bit of a weird situation, but regardless, this clearly has big implications. If Struble is out long term, it forces Kent Hughes and company to make a big decision on Harris. Like, is it time to go all in and move him? Is it time to open that spot for Lane Hutson? I don't know. There's a lot of stuff we don't know about it, so I'm not going to dwell too long. But what do you guys think? If Struble's out of the lineup, would you still trade Jordan Harris? I'd love to hear from you. Let's move on to the second part of the video, and I'm going to talk a bit about look, it's Renaud Lavoie. He has some interesting takes sometimes, as a lot of Habs fans know, but he had a little section on BPM Sport where he was talking a bit about the Trevor Zegras stuff. Of course, we heard yesterday that Pierre Lebrun said that Montreal is one of the only 4 or 5 teams that called to inquire about Trevor Zegras. And in this segment on Twitter, you can go check it out on BPM Sport's official Twitter. You'll be able to see this clip as well. He basically said, le nom d'Arber Xhekaj va être mentionné et exigé. Basically, Xhekaj is going to be in this conversation. And if you watch that full clip, he says, like, the question is Xhekaj going to be in that thing? He said, yeah. 100% is in fact what Renaud Lavoie said. He said 100% Arber Xhekaj is going to be in these conversations, and you kind of got the vibe that the talks start and end with Xhekaj. He's kind of the bare minimum that Anaheim would want back. Like, you start with him, not just Xhekaj, you'd need more. And that got me thinking, would I trade Arber Xhekaj for Trevor Zegras? Now, that's a question that's really hard to answer because Arber Xhekaj, of course, undrafted. He's currently playing third pairing minutes. Probably going to be, well, he's more second pairing minutes now, and that's probably where he's going to be for a good chunk of the rest of the season. But he brings an element to this team. His offensive upside is incredible. His physicality is unmatched on the team, and his defense has seen a significant improvement. His discipline's better. Yes, he took a minor penalty tonight, but that wasn't like a lack of discipline play. It was just kind of a bit of a fluky one. So Arber Xhekaj, like, look, Zegras is rare. To get a guy like him is extremely rare. It's not easy to do. But would you trade Arber Xhekaj for him? This might sound delusional to people who are not Habs fans, but I don't think I would. I think I would. I don't know. This is one of those times where I really, really struggle because Xhekaj's a fan favorite. What he brings to this team is incredible. But Zegras legitimately has the potential to be a first-line winger on a Stanley Cup contending team a few years down the road. And when you get the opportunity to get a guy like that, I feel like we'd be crazy to not talk about moving Arber Xhekaj, right? So in a vacuum, straight up talent-wise, yes, I would do it. I think, though, Kent Hughes and co. would have a very tough time moving Arber Xhekaj for Trevor Zegras just because of what he's done for the team, because of the elements he brings. And I feel like, here's my problem. I think Montreal would probably value Xhekaj a bit too high for the Ducks to end up coming to an agreement with Montreal for Arber Xhekaj. They say, no. Xhekaj has some serious value. You're not going to get Xhekaj and another prospect and a first-round pick from us. No. That's where I think this trade would break down. I think Montreal would say, no, too bad. Xhekaj's worth too much to us. But let me know down below. I'm so split on this. I think objectively, like value-wise, I would say yes, it's worth trading Arber Xhekaj for Trevor Zegras, but there's so many other factors that go into it. Let me know down below. Final thing I want to talk about today is the truth revealed behind Colin White. And look, the Habs made a sneaky signing today, and I use that word sometimes when they make signings of players that are, maybe not that good, but I do think this is a sneaky one, and there's a couple reasons, and I'm going to tell you the truth behind why they did this. Now, on the surface, I put out a poll today, and, well, I want to say it was split between you guys, but realistically, it wasn't so much split as I bring it up on my phone now. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people kind of said they were indifferent, but more people said they hated it than they loved it. But I saw a lot of negative reactions saying, like, why Brandon Gignac? He really earned his spot. The Habs signed him to a 2-year, 2-way deal. Like no, like what? Why would we get rid of him all of a sudden for Colin White, a guy who, yeah, once was a 40-point scorer, but now has kind of struggled to stay in the NHL, and Pittsburgh fans said he was terrible. He just walked across to play with Montreal tonight. Well, here's why. There's a couple reasons why. First of all, Laval, while they're out of a playoff spot right now, they're definitely not having their best season. It's still feasible for them to make the playoffs and make a push, especially if Brandon Gignac, who has been one of their best players this season, goes back to the team. So, of course, to make room for Colin White, Montreal had to waive Brandon Gignac. But here's the catch with this. From what I understand, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, when Brandon Gignac signed his contract with Montreal, his 2-way salary for the AHL was marked at about $350,000. And with that AHL cap hit, that's a lot more than a lot of teams are willing to pay for an AHL forward. Montreal gave him the benefit. They said, hey, you're doing well. Have some run with us, and we'll pay you handsomely for being in the AHL if we have to send you back there. And that is going to scare a lot of teams away. And the consensus is Brandon Gignac's not going to get claimed. He's looked good for Montreal. He's had a lot of hustle, a lot of speed. I've really liked what I've seen from him. But he is more valuable to the organization down in Laval right now. And with that Laval cap, that AHL, that second part of the two-way contract salary, teams are not going to want to claim him. So that's reason one. Like, Laval's going to go for a push, and I don't think Brandon Gignac will get claimed. And the other reason, Colin White feels a big need for this team. I know we've talked about Lucas Condado, we've talked about Brandon Gignac, but this is just the Chris Tierney signing of this year. He's 27 years old. He is somewhat of a veteran. He's had some good seasons in the past, and while I don't think this is necessarily a reclamation project, it really does little harm. He's just that solid fourth-line player. If you look at his player card, his best strength is arguably his defense this season. If you look at the J Fresh card for Colin White. And that was kind of on display today. I mean, he definitely didn't stand out, but he looked solid. He looked like a solid NHL fourth liner. So Kent Hughes, I think this is kind of brilliant. It's a sneaky move to bring in a veteran center who can just hunker down your fourth line the rest of the season. You can scratch him if you need to. If you want to try someone else out, you mess around with the lineups, whatever. If you can scratch him, and it's not going to matter too much. And they get Laval with probably their best possible roster heading into the playoff push where they desperately need some wins. So it's a great move from Kent Hughes and company on both sides of this. It makes a ton of sense for Montreal, and despite the initial, I don't want to say backlash, but there was some backlash to waiving Brandon Gignac. I think this was an awesome move, and I think it's, even if it doesn't necessarily contribute to Montreal winning more games heading forward, I think a lot of fans might be able to swallow the losses if it means a better draft pick and a better performance from Laval. But that'll do it for this episode of Habs Digest. If you enjoyed, leave a like, comment, subscribe to the channel. We're pushing for 11K. We're almost there, and if you guys could hit that button, I'd really appreciate it. I've been your host, Josh Gosse. I'll catch you in the next one.